Welcome to this week's episode of the Indian Dots podcast. We're joined by a special guest and we will tell you more about her in a second. But in this week's episode, we discuss the following. What is a visual artist? Inspiration behind storytelling and the arts as a career, and how Karan's picture is the portrait of Britain. It's not the portrait of Britain, but you'll find out why, and how he won the BJP award. Well, he didn't. Our guest, Jaskirt, did, but they're not running for the Indian Congress National Party. Calm down. Nothing's going on in Indian politics. It stands for, what does it stand for?
British Journal of Photography.
Boom. There you go. If you want to find out more about it, please follow through. See you there. Welcome to this week's episode of the Indian Dots podcast. We are joined by a very, very special guest who is, frankly, making, I'd say, national waves. I think that's fair to say. You will understand why in my current intro. So she is an award-winning visual artist whose work focuses on a socially engaged practice, working with local communities in the West Midlands. She is interested in celebrating untold stories while exploring visual representations of gender, ethnicity, and place. In September 2021, she won the RBSA 2021 Photography Prize. And in December 2021, she won the BJP Portrait of Britain Award for her portrait of, guess who? Dr. Karan or Dr. Jaz Mavi, whichever way he wants to have it. Both of these images were taken from the body of work, Birmingham Lockdown Stories, that she created. This work was commissioned by Grain Projects in 2020, exhibited at the International Format Festival in 2021, and in January 2021, sold out as her first self-published book. Her work has been shown nationally, as I've already mentioned, shown at places like Wembley Stadium, Manchester People's Museum. Also, I think it appeared a few times at Birmingham New Street, but we'll go into that. And it has widely been published, included in the Sunday Times, and I think in the Guardian. She has been the recipient of awards, including the Photo Imaging Council Award and the Magnum and Ideas Tap Sports Award for her work on women's football and Everyday Olympian. I think I'm running out of accolades. I'm pretty sure you've won everything. So, Jaskirt, how are you doing? Thank you for joining us.
Good. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the lovely introduction.
That's okay.
Indy, even with his Bamar voice through. That was
what,
good,
is it?
man.
Is it noticeable?
Man.
It's not noticeable, is it?
Hi guys, welcome to the Indy. I'm Dr. Podcast.
Please no. I think, you know what? I'm going to take a fisherman's friend right now to make sure that I'm okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
A fisherman's friend.
Have you never had them? Oh, they're like really strong herbal meds.
Mate, there's something called a locket. That's what everyone else has. Okay.
No. This is like the heavy duty stuff. Look at this, fisherman's friends.
They're really old school. They are.
Yeah, they're really old school. Exactly. They're the stuff that
you are really old school, man.
Yeah.
India the way, honey. Yeah, that's what.
Next thing you'll be getting out the herbal tablets.
Yeah, it is a herbal tablet. It doesn't taste nice. It's not comfortable. It's just pure menthol. That's all it is.
How much brandy have you had? That's the question.
None. I haven't got any brandy here in London. Otherwise, if I was in Birmingham, I'd be like, yeah, Dad, sort me out.
Brandy.
Right? Yeah. Brandy. Anyway, thank you for joining us. Tell us about the picture that everyone has seen. So those of you that haven't seen, it's the picture of Karan with his arms folded, looking like a bad man after a 13-hour shift in the middle of the hospital. And it's actually made it around the UK. Every time you go onto Karan's Instagram story, he's sharing something that I guess has found of her being tagged in the picture. So it's still going around and round and round.
Well, first of all, I've got to say thank you, massive thank you to Jaz for letting me, giving me the time to take the portrait. We had I really enjoyed it. The whole project was great. I think because of the time when I shot the project, it was after that very first lockdown, and I photographed 20 people across the Birmingham region, and people were so welcoming and so happy to give their time. So I spent like a good couple of hours with each person, sometimes 3 hours with a person, which, normally it's kind of like people want to get things done quickly, but people were just so happy to spend their time because we'd had such, we just hadn't had much social contact with people because of lockdown. So it was in 2020 that summer. And it was brilliant because I remember I came and it was about 6:37. And so the light was dimming. So we shot the portraits first. And straight away when I was shooting Jaz, he just had such a presence. And I wasn't directing him, but he had such a great presence in terms of just the way he was standing. And I don't like to direct a lot. And it was good. It was a good moment. And I think it's funny because I think some of your colleagues were walking behind you. So we had to wait for them to pass. And there was all of that. So it was really good. And then we sat and chatted for about an hour or so, didn't we?
It was quite surreal, wasn't it? I really remember that day. It was really, I don't know if it was a warm day, but it was definitely
it was
light outside. And I remember, what do I remember from that day? You had that really cool camera, which I want you to talk about. It's not like a camera here. It's like she was holding the camera like here and taking the photos. That proper, like, I'm going to say old school, but it's not old school, but it was just like a proper camera. I remember that very vividly. I remember, I think the children had done some paintings on the windows, and the one was about a rainbow, and I think you captured that as well. I remember thinking really cool. That, which I'd been in the hospital every day. I hadn't looked at it, but you pointed out to me, and I was like, that's really nice. And then, the other thing I really remember when I look at that picture now is, this is actually before I got back into the gym, Indy. So I've been out of the gym for ages. I was like at my worst in terms of like body shape and everything, and hadn't done my hair or anything. And I was just like, oh man, I look so rough, man, in that picture. Everyone keeps telling me, oh, you look really nice.
You don't have to do your hair. You're wearing a patka. Like,
no, I'm at my beard, man. Like my beard, as in,
you're wearing a face mask all day. It's all right. Don't worry.
Yeah, it is what it is.
But you know what's funny? My someone else I photographed as part of the project. Navi. So she photographed her in Sutton Park, and she said to me, she showed the photograph of herself to her hairdresser or to a friend. They were like, wow, you look amazing. And she goes, I hate my hair. And so then she went and got a haircut after she saw the portrait.
Oh, wow.
So I think people are more self-conscious when it's themselves. But yeah, you look, I mean, I didn't pick up on any of that, what you just mentioned.
No. I mean, this is just because like people keep saying, "Oh, is this you? Is this you?" Like the picture. It's actually really interesting. Like, in hospital now, Jaz, people literally come up to me and they'll just start doing this. They'll start posing like this. I'm like, okay, yeah, but it's a bit like, I'm like, you understand, the photographer won the award. Okay, this is all about her. Like, I'm literally just the model. Like, it's really odd, like feeling. I'm like, I haven't done anything. Somebody came up to me today and said, oh, we saw that you won photographer of the year. I said, no, I'm not the photographer. now they get confused about who's a photographer. And I was like,
well, technically it was Portrait of Britain, and you are the person who's got the in the portrait. So you are definitely a part of winning it. You know, I think there's different elements for me that make up a good portrait, and a lot of it is that collaborative nature with the person you're working with. So, and I can't make the kind of work I make without people like yourself who are willing to give their time and energy to support it. So yeah, no, it's a collaborative win.
Absolutely. I think I want to give a special shout out to, I think it's your family member, isn't it? Cousin Taran.
Yeah.
So Taran, Indy Taran and I went to university together. She's at UOB in the Bhangra team as well.
Was this how you made the connection?
She reached out to me. She said, "Oh, I've got. I think she's your cousin, isn't she?"
Yeah.
Just And she said, "Oh, my cousin's a photographer. She's looking for someone in this space. Are you interested?" Yeah. And that's how it came about. But yeah, it's a big shout out to Taran for sorting that out. But yeah, our conversation was really good. I remember actually going really deep at like you asked whatever you wanted to ask, and it's really nice actually. Like you said, people were happy to share, because I think what I felt at that point is people were seeing what they saw about COVID on the news. But now you got to come inside and you saw the inside of the hospital, and it's not like, okay, you saw some of the stuff that we weren't like particularly ducky or anything. Like, we were like, okay, this is what it is, and this is our story. We want people to know that we are getting through this. And I think for me, that was the big thing, to let people know that COVID is here, COVID's still here, but we've got a story to share. And that, I think that was what was amazing about your magazine that you produced. It was stories across society, and everybody had a story. And it's something we always say. I always say to people, like, you should always share your story. You've always got a story to tell. You might not think it's going to help you, but it'll help somebody else. And we always say that. But COVID was such a great example of how everybody was dealing with it in their own way. Everybody had their own challenges and struggles. Yeah. And then you had that, but then you captured it with this image, which like immortalizes whatever it, immortalizes. Now, when I ask people, it comes up like, okay, so what do you think when you look at the picture? You just get so many different responses. Like, I can't remember what I was thinking at the time. I think I was just trying to, look like cool or whatever. But people are like, oh yeah, it really gives a sense of this and inspires this. I'm
smoldering like, as if he's the Rock.
I was like, if you're getting that from the photo, I'm really happy, man. If it's inspiring these like confidence and all these things. And obviously from a sick perspective, it's really nice. I've had a lot of people saying, it's really good, that we're on the map now, and you put Heartlands on the map. My hospital is so happy now. They're like, oh my God, Heartlands, nobody talks about Heartlands. It's like in the shadow of Queen Elizabeth. Now you put us on the map. I was like, well, there you go. Now you need to let more people into the hospital so they can see.
Were you allowed to go and shoot at that time to go into the hospital? Because I'm assuming you had to get some kind of clearance in order to be able to enter.
I'm going to level with you. I didn't ask anyone, man. I was like, we're just going to do it.
Well,
it's one of those where, no, it's one of those like, I'm a doctor. No one's going to say anything to me, right? So no one said anything. I just came to the front door. I was like, just come in, right? And then everyone just gets a bit like, everyone gets excited more than anything. So they see a photographer and it's not like they're like, I'm going to go and tell on you. Have you got permission? They're more just like, oh, wow, this is so cool. So people are more like that. And they were just like, okay, yeah, let's get out of the way. But I was like, bureaucracy is going to be, I'm going to ask permission. Then it's going to go to like 20 different decision makers, red tape, blah, blah, blah. We miss it, man. This is like once in a lifetime. COVID is happening. Let's capture the moment. So I was like, forget all that. And now the hospital loves it, isn't it? They're like, oh my God, you put us on the map. So no, I did not ask anybody.
And we just kind of walked around. Whatever Jaz said, I was just like, "What? So how are we doing?" And I was like, "Yeah, that works for me." Because
like, I'm with him. That's it. escape answer. I'm with him. I'm with the doctor. That's it.
Oh man.
Well, it is just trying to avoid that bureaucracy, like you said, because you can just get tied up in red tape sometimes, and actually, you just want to talk to one person, get their view on things, and and I mean, I guess if I had shown Heartlands in a bad light, then I would have been in trouble. But it's been all good. So
champion.
This has all come across really well.
There was one.
How have you felt, Jaz? Actually, seeing your picture up all around the country.
Well, this is the thing now. So I was in Oxford two weekends ago, and I was in Westfield. I think it's the Westfield Mall, and my friend was like, "Oh, look, BJP," and I was like, "Okay," and then we stood there. And I was like, "Oh my God, I might actually get to see myself. I haven't seen it. People keep sending it to me," and so we waited there for like 15 minutes, and then they were like, Jaz, it's like 100 photos. Like, come on. I was like, all right, you play that game. Like, can't tell. All right, five more photos. They got 5 more photos. He's like, all right, one more minute. And then like you're going down the escalator, you're still looking, trying to catch it. So I haven't caught it myself yet. But even yesterday, Indy, Manny messaged me. So Manny's one of our friends, Jaz, and he was like, I'm not sure if it was you, but I was in Leeds and I saw this photo of you, and I was like, yeah, it is. So it's just, when you said like it's going to go around the country, I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting the outpour. It was more like that. I'm like so overwhelmed, like at the reach. Like it's just, I mean, JCD are like the biggest advertising. Well, they're the one I know the most company. Yeah. And so it's just everywhere, and it's just amazing. And actually what I did do when mine didn't come up is I looked at all the rest, and I was like, this is actually, it's amazing. It's amazing that they're sharing this.
Because that happened. So I went with my husband and kids to New Street to try and spot it myself. So, and we stood there. It must have been, 50 minutes. And
550.
Yeah, we were there.
Oh, wow.
But I kept thinking it's going to be the next one, and we saw everyone's. And actually, same like yourself, I was seeing everyone else's, and I was just like, wow, the standard of work is just beautiful. And it gave me a real appreciation that, wow, this is quite a big achievement. Yeah. And then, but I was really desperate, obviously, to see your portrait and see it up. So then the kids were getting antsy because they were just stood there. So my husband, they started going up and down the escalator. So they've been up
playing a game.
I was going to say 50 minutes. I'd be surprised if the kid stands there for 5 minutes.
Well, they were just running up and down, but I was stood in one spot with my camera ready, trying to get the picture. But I managed to capture everybody else's, but my own, basically. And they went up and down the escalator about 5 times before my husband was like, we need to go. I was like, no, I'm sure it'll be the next one.
You brought your tent.
I was ready. But so I haven't managed to go again yet. But I've managed, so many other people have seen it and sent me photos, which has been so kind.
No, exactly. It's just very inspiring. Again, it'll live with me for a long time. And if we ever get to collaborate in the future about another pandemic that happens or whatever happens, then
let's hope it's in better circumstances. Yeah. Right? Come on.
Well, look, if it does, I will be ready, man. Like body will be there.
You can't do the same picture again. You have to do a different pose now, Karan.
No, we had some other poses. That was the one that was selected. But don't worry, man. I'm gonna have like Thanos's like gauntlet or something. I'm gonna do something cool. Man.
Man, imagine that. I was gonna ask you, how many images did you have to take in order to get that picture of Karan? Like how many attempts?
Well, it's like Karan was saying, I shoot on a medium format film camera, so it might mean nothing to you, but basically it only takes 10 pictures per film roll.
Right.
So it means I might use, I think, a couple of film rolls. I think maybe I used a couple of film rolls, and that was it. So 20 pictures. But actually, those ones we took were probably some of the first ones, weren't they? So they're probably within the first 5 photos, and managed to get the shot within that. So yeah. But using that medium format camera, basically what it does, it completely slows down my process, because whereas with the digital camera, or even with your phone camera, you're constantly taking lots of photographs because it doesn't cost you anything. Whereas with the film camera, that one photograph, so that one film roll costs about £10. So that one picture is going to cost you, I mean, it's £1 a picture basically. But then when you're even developing it, that costs you another £11 per film roll to develop. So it costs a lot of money. Just to shoot on film is expensive now. And it's gone crazy. The prices for film have gone crazy since the pandemic. But so you're not going to waste those shots, essentially. So that's why even when I'm shooting with it, although you might only have 10 shots, I feel like sometimes I take more, but without pressing the shutter, because you're kind of lining it up. But then I'll go, actually, that's not working. So I just won't press the shutter and I'll move it or try something else. So yeah, that's a long-winded answer.
No, it makes perfect sense. All of that adds up. It's pretty clear. So, okay, so it must have been about like 1 or 2 tops in order to get that one.
What, to get that actual photograph? I think there's probably 3 photographs that were similar in that space that we took. But yeah, it was within the first 5, 6 photographs, I think. It was on that first film roll anyway, because the light was so dim, and that was indoors, wasn't it? So we shot up there first, and then we went outside.
There we go. And just natural, to confirm, natural. This is au natural, right? Just to confirm then, so this picture is one of the best pictures that represents Britain, essentially. Is that the main overarching message now that's being pushed?
Yeah, sounds quite good coming from you.
Yeah, it does. It does, isn't it?
So it's one of 100 winning portraits of, and British Journal of Photography is the biggest, magazine here anyway, and across the world. It's world renowned. So, and the Portrait of Britain Award, next to the Taylor Wessing in terms of photography prizes, is the 2 biggest portrait awards. Yeah, so it's something I've entered every year. I've entered for years on end, and so to finally win, it's a pretty big deal. So
just need a pandemic, innit? That's what we need.
And a good doctor.
Pandemic, a good doctor, one that's really run down and tired after a long shift.
2 funny things that also happen are, so yes, it's one of 100 photos, right? But like members of my friends and family are like, no, this is the Portrait of Britain. That's how they perceive it. They're like,
yeah, exactly.
There's one photo and you are the photo. So that's what they do. And I got other people who are like, oh, BJP party. Oh, acha.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. I read it and I saw that. And I was like,
BJP,
I just
BJP
Googled it quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had that actually. A couple of people have got in touch with me on LinkedIn and they've said, what's the BJP? And they're thinking of it as in the BJP.
Yeah, of course they are.
Running Modi, like this is I'm running campaign with Modi.
Yeah. So I've had to kind of write it all out or put it in brackets.
The British Journal
of Photography, because I think for the Indian audience, they're getting a little bit
antsy.
Yeah, they're a little bit not there's a bit skeptical as to what is this portrait you've won and who have you won it with.
Exactly. Just when you say, because I'm interested in this, you say you're a visual artist.
Yeah.
How do we differentiate that from photographer? Like, you've obviously gone with that term for a reason. What does that mean to you? It's a powerful term. Like, if you say I'm a visual artist, to me that's like, wow. Whereas photographer, like, when I think photographer, I think like wedding photographer. That's where my mind goes. It's like that kind of stuff. Whereas visual artist to me is more like you're a storyteller. What does it mean to you?
Well, exactly what you've said, I guess. I see myself as a visual artist but I use the medium of photography as my art form. So to tell stories, to tell a narrative, to connect with local communities, and connect with local people, to try and tell marginalized group their stories and share their narrative. I use photography, so I am a photographer, but I view my practice more as a visual art medium, I guess, because I don't make work primarily for commercial reasons or to sell it. It's for art exhibitions. For that reason, yeah.
And actually, what's interesting, Indy, when you did the introduction, is that kind of the niche or the genre that we fall into as a podcast is very similar. We're trying to champion kind of niche minority people who are doing extraordinary things, and you fall into that as well. So the question I would have is, we're all brown, we're all Asian. This isn't something like, if you said to mommy, daddy, I want to be a visual artist, like, what? Like, does that pay bills? Like, now you said, it's not commercially driven in your thing, but it obviously can be. So the pursuit of wanting to be a visual artist or be a storyteller or champion minority voices, where did that come from? What's the essence and the, your origin story, as it were, of that?
It's a good question. And I think there's a lot of ties in terms of culturally of being accepted, in terms of this being an acceptable career path. It's not very accepted by, my mum and dad's generation. They didn't quite understand it. It kind of happened when I was at university. So I did a mixed media degree. I actually worked in radio initially. But I first time I picked up a camera was when I was at university, and it was a photography module. So I didn't do a photography degree or anything. But then from there, I just fell in love with it. The first photographs I took were, I was covering some women's football matches because I'm a big sports fan. And so I covered some women's football matches. I was writing BBC reports because I like to write as well. And took some photographs, more kind of studied portraits, like the one I shot of yourself. And and I just fell in love with it. I just felt like it was a really powerful medium to use in terms of then translating that into a career path. I guess I've always juggled it with other things because primarily my photography I'm not trying to make lots of money from it, and I don't make lots of money from it. What keeps it a sustainable career is I teach as well. So I've been a teacher for the past 12 years. So in FE and more recently at university. So I've been lecturing at BCU. So that is my stable income, so to speak. And it's also something that I found my parents were initially, they could understand a bit more.
So they could see it more as like a hobby for you, and they're like, oh, okay, she does that in her spare time, but she's making money off doing a normal traditional job.
Well, my mum and dad, actually, they came to a lot of my exhibitions, so they could see it's not just like a hobby per se.
But obviously.
But I actually get that leveled at me a lot. Like even recently at Christmas, from family that were saying, oh, so it's a hobby. I'm like, no, this is my career. Wow. Like my practice is my career. Like I do earn money from it. Like I gain funding. So for instance, and I'm quite an advocate of talking about money in terms of, because I think otherwise you can't really understand it. But so in terms of a career path, so the Birmingham lockdown stories was a £2,000 commission. Now to make that with grain projects, but that in itself, I actually probably, what I earned after actually all the time I worked was probably £80 a day for the amount of money, the amount of time, energy, expenses, etc. But that has, look how much I've got off the back of that. The RBSA award I won was £1,000. I've obviously got so much great exposure from shooting your portrait and winning the award for that. So, and I always find one project always leads on to the other and get more commissions. So the commission I got this year, I applied for Arts Council funding for a new project on people, place and sport that's going to be exhibited this year as part of the Commonwealth Games. And
wow, okay.
And that was so the project grant I got for that was £15,000. Now that's not 15 grand just to me, it was to pay for equipment, pay assistants, etc. But it's a huge project, it's a big deal. But I think a lot in our community, people just think, oh, you're just faffing around. Like what you're doing doesn't really matter.
It's a bit mean, but
that's you've hit the nail on the head. It's that it doesn't really matter. Time pass, hobby, age, that's nice. But really, they're not understanding the gravity to and the reason why you're doing it. And so, I guess it's easier probably for people who aren't your family, like friends. to view it with that kind of, give it the respect it's due. Whereas you're right, family have this way of oversimplifying, let's say, a situation and be like, yeah, that's nice. And have you told that story then to, the people in your family about why it's a passion, where it comes from, what you're trying to, the essence of, you'll say if you had a mission statement as to why you do it, do they understand why you?
Yeah, my close family all do. Like my parents, my siblings, even my cousins that I'm really close to, because they've all come to my exhibitions. So any exhibition I have, they're always the first to support me. So they get it, but it's kind of like extended family who you see now and again.
Yeah, okay.
And they go, right, so why are you doing that? And they go, no, okay. Like, what? They don't quite get it.
So when they ask that question, why are you doing it? Are you someone who's like, you're not going to get it even if I explain it, so I'm going to give you like a very superficial answer, or you will go there and really like get into it with them?
Depends on the character. If they really care, then I'll have that chat with them. But a lot of them, sometimes they just make the often what I find is they'll make the passing comment of it being a hobby, or they just don't understand the arts and how it works. So then it's just a matter of actually going, well, this is what it is, and actually explain, well, you get funding from X, Y, and Y. So I've had family, but I've also had friends say it to me as well, who aren't Asian, who are white, who also don't get it. And so it's just breaking down those barriers of like, there's a little bit of ignorance, because I guess it's not as common a job to be an artist as it is, let's say, I don't know, working in IT or in a bank or teaching even. But teaching people can understand. So actually, whenever I meet someone new and they say,
it's relatable, isn't it?
Yeah, I just say, I'm a teacher, because I just don't want to get into that really long.
And they get it, don't they? It's just like, oh, got it. Yeah, teacher. Yeah, fine. Yeah. It's true. There are some jobs where the people just get it and they don't really need to ask. Whereas, there are some jobs, when someone will say something, even people say it to me, I'm like, okay, but what do you actually do day to day? That's like my follow-up question. But I'm genuinely interested to understand, because there's so much. And I think, as we grow up, there are what is seen as kind of these safe kind of, professions. But now, in the world, and so Indy and I don't have kids yet, Jess, but when we do, I'm thinking, what world are they going to grow up in, and what are they going to be exposed to in schools? How a careers fair is going to be different then. That it's not just going to be about this, and this. Like, I was reading an article yesterday morning about there's a town in Portugal. I think it's been called the nomad city of the world, and people are just flocking to this area. And they're just nomadic people from all around the world. And they're just there with the internet connection, laptop, and they're just working in different things. And I was like, wow, that's going to be a real thing in the future. People are just going to be able to just do so many different things. And I think where that comes from is so we come back to money. I like how you picked up on that. It's, what do I actually need? What do I need to live off? And can I have a more frugal life, which is sustainable, but then have freedom to do these other things, rather than, short shot of Gaddi house, gold, let's say, the things that were championed kind of in our kind of culture. I think I feel there's a shift in that now as well. And this whole pretense is going, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's always been, have I got a roof over my head? And can I sustain, like, make a sustainable career which provides for my family, which I can and I am. But then I don't need, how much more do I need after that? And I'm quite frugal in terms of with money anyway. And for me, I love what I do. So it's not like I feel like I need to go out doing X and Y, because I get a lot of satisfaction actually from the kind of work I make. And what I do from it anyway. So so in that way, it's, if I can sustain my career with my teaching practice, kind of supporting it. But actually I left my teaching job at Christmas. So I kind of jumped, not jump ship, but like I just left, because I've had so many good opportunities come up, and I just thought, right, I've got to take a risk at some point. I'll do it now. Okay. So
especially to ride the wave of everything that's happened now, I think it's probably a good idea.
Yeah, so exactly that, ride that wave. But I've got, with the Commonwealth Games project I'm doing at the moment, I just found actually I was getting too stretched. I was doing too much, I was teaching too much, and then I was doing my projects on top, and then I've got the kids as well. And I was like, I can't do it all. So actually and actually since I've quit since January, I'm finding I'm much happier. I've got a much better work-life balance. Like I'm
Good.
more present with the kids, but work is still coming in, and financially I'm fine. So it's difficult. I think with our older generation, I'm going to just go back to that point as well, because it's something I've thought about a lot, and I can understand why they never thought of the arts as a career, because
it wasn't safe. It wasn't
yeah
clear. There's no pathway that's made for you to go into. It's just, oh, you're just gonna see how things go and then maybe go event to events, but there's no stable income being paid by a bigger corporation or establishment or institution.
And when they've had such a backstory of, you know, migrating and then struggle and hardship, I can see then why they've gone, well, you should go for the safe option, which I completely understand, but I've big respect to like my family, my parents especially, that they've gone, okay, you want to do that. They've always supported me in it.
That's great.
Even if they've not completely understood it, but then my mom's always, for instance, she's always seen how hard I've worked, and she understands the value of it.
That's the key word, isn't it? It's the value. And from the way you're speaking, the level of gratification you're getting from the work. You know, I was talking to, I think my sister actually on the weekend. I was in Surrey, and we were saying the difference between a job and a profession. You know, job is what people moan about, whereas a profession is you thoroughly enjoy what you do, and therefore it doesn't seem like a job. And it sounds like when you're doing what you're doing, you know, you're in your element, and you're storytelling, and you're creating, and you're a creative. You know, you are a creative. So if you had, you know, the next generation now, so your kids, let's say, or you know, somebody at the Gurdwara, and you know, they've heard of you, like, oh wow, you're a visual artist, and they came to you and they were like, okay, so if I wanted to look into this type of thing, what is the advice you give to the next generation about how to just explore this, you know, this kind of avenue, so they have an idea of, you know, the type of things you do? Or I mean, you can talk about the arts in general if that's easier, or as a visual artist.
My advice, and I guess I'm actually lecturing a module called professional practice at the moment, and it's all about actually how do we make a career out of what we love to do. And I guess in terms of photography, and it's just know your research, but actually a lot of it is to do with confidence as well. And you could be the hardest working grafting photographer or visual artist, but actually if you're not making the right connections, or you're not networking with the right people, you're not getting your work seen by the kind of people that can give you the commissions, then you're not going to get anywhere in such a way. So you kind of have to have a very online presence now anyway, but being able to speak to people. And it's something I've reflected on in the last few years, because it's something I've got better at in my 30s. And I think actually since I've had my kids, that confidence has just kind of blossomed in me, where I've gone, okay, I'm really going to go for it. This is what I want to do. And I think I guess it comes back to that thing. My mom and dad, they own a shop. They're shopkeepers. My dad was a taxi driver and bus driver. They never taught me how to network or how to schmooze.
No, obviously not.
That's the word, yeah.
They know how to.
It's true. It isn't a common thing that's taught to you. You just tend to pick it up over time. The more and more you do things,
or the type of language you use with people, or how to talk to people in the kind of work atmosphere. That's something you kind of learn or I've learned myself kind of growing up, but my parents probably haven't. Well, they didn't, because they knew how to work hard, and they gave me that hard work ethic.
The graft.
That grafting I got from them. The other elements of kind of fitting into society here in the art world, and learning actually how do I navigate this art world, I've had to pick up myself. So that's the kind of thing I'd teach my children, is that, okay, if you want to get into that world, then this is how you write an email. This is how you network with the right people. You've got to have the work to back it up. You've got to
Absolutely.
You have to be able to hone your
product.
craft.
The product, as it were, like what you produce has to be amazing. Yeah. But you're saying the other side of that is, like you said, the visibility and getting the opportunities.
And getting your work there, because and it's being able to speak that language and know. And I'm sure it's maybe similar in your professions in terms of being able to talk a language that's
People are receptive to, and they will then provide you the opportunity. So for me,
there's a sort of work talk that people tend to put on, and we all know how to flick it on and off whenever we need to. It's just something you pick up though. No one ever tells you to go to work and just be your normal subdued self. You have to kind of just get out there and put yourself into uncomfortable situations and kind of understand how to navigate it better.
Precisely. And I think that's actually a lot of risk taking as a photographer or a visual artist, that actually you have to put yourself out there a lot and be ready for a lot of rejection. That, you know, you're not going to get everything, and that's fine, but that can be really character building. Yeah. So for my kids, and actually my nephew is super creative, and he's only 8 years old, or 9, I think. But he loves drawing and illustrating.
That's great.
Yeah.
And he's so good in that, that actually, you know, I'd completely support him and tell him how, well, if that's a career for you, this is what you do. Yeah, there's always a little bit of a framework, but actually that's going to chop and change anyway, to a certain degree. But being able to have that confidence to go and put your work in front of people is key, I think.
It's quite scary as well, isn't it? Because you're putting yourself in front of people just to be judged. And a lot of us don't like being judged, especially if you feel like your work, if you think your work isn't adequate, then it's very difficult to go into a situation where you're going to be openly judged and accept what may be or what comes of it.
And that's a really good point, actually, because it's really important to have a support network that you can actually go to and go, okay, honestly, what do you think of this work? A sounding board that you can go, right, maybe should I tweak this? And over the last few years, through Workshow Grow, which is an online school, so to speak, by Natasha Caruana, a really amazing artist. She's run it. I've gained this really brilliant support network, and through other places too, where actually they're my sounding board, that I can show them some of my work and get some feedback. And I think you need that. And a lot of the time, there's this perception that you work alone and you're kind of the lone wolf and all your achievements are your own, but it's not. You need a really strong and really good support network to help build you up, and also to get you wherever you want to go. Like, it just doesn't happen on its own. And I think, especially when you feel like you're being judged, or you're putting yourself in that position, being able to speak to people that you trust, that gives you a little bit of comfort in practice as well. That if you're going to show certain things, etc.
Yeah, I agree. Well, on the topic of networking, how did you jump into the Commonwealth Games and get that opportunity? Because you obviously did some work with them closely. Tell us a bit more about that.
That's a good one, actually, as a example of being able to network. So Multi-Story are an arts organisation based in Sandwell. And I did a project with them in 2018, 2019 called Mitti Di Khushbu. And that was basically based on my family. So I shot portraits of all my family members. I focused more on the elder generation, because at the time I was pregnant. I was about 8 months pregnant, so I couldn't photograph all my extended family. So I photographed all of them. I collected their stories. So I got them all to write the life story and collected old photographs, which I then exhibited in 2019 at the Blast Photography Festival with Multi-Story. And it's from there that really my relationship with Multi-Story grew. And then they helped me network with the Commonwealth Games, because I said from the outset to Multi-Story, I want to make work for the Commonwealth Games, because previously I've made work on women's football, Everyday Olympian, because of my own passion for sports, but also showcasing normal everyday people, grassroots sports, that idea of community. So Emma and Nicola from Grain Projects, and Emma from Multi-Story, they, because of their standing as the biggest arts organisations, visual arts, photography-wise organisations in the Birmingham, Sandwell area, they were having conversations with the lead producers at the Commonwealth Games, and they, just because they're so nice, and they knew of my work, and and I'd worked with them, and I told them I want to make this project happen. They kept dropping my name to them, and then I managed to get meetings with the producers at the Commonwealth Games. I put proposals forward. I got the Arts Council funding, and the Commonwealth Games team, the Cultural Festival, they really believed in the work that I wanted to produce. They really had a lot of faith in me that I'd be able to do this. And thankfully, I can say that the faith's been put in a good place, because I've made the work. Now we're working on getting the exhibitions ready. So
nice.
Oh wow, so it's all ready to go.
Yeah. So the community exhibitions, there's not
Nice.
there's 9 outdoor exhibitions in total. So there's 8 going out to community spaces. So where I've basically been taking the photographs. So all of that I've shot and edited, and they'll be up from end of March, April. And then the main exhibition, which will be a large scale kind of billboard size outdoor exhibition at Sandor Valley, will be around the time of the games. So at the moment, that one I'm still working on producing. It's all been shot, just need to edit it. So so I've been photographing a lot of grassroots clubs over the last year.
And you wouldn't have known, taking that opportunity about 2-3 years ago that it would lead to something like this. So I guess having the approach of networking and just being outright forward with the end goal. I don't want to say end game because he says that all the time. With the end goal in mind, it makes it sort of easier for you to sort of put that out to other people and say, if you have a connection with this is what I would like to do anyway. And naturally that's obviously panned out for you.
I think from 2018, 2019, when I made Mitti Di Khushbu, it's building that connection, that relationship. But then 2020, I made the Birmingham lockdown stories, and with each project, I was just able to reinforce my skill level and develop also my socially engaged practice of me working with different communities. And I think that all helped. It just helped my portfolio and going. So when I approached Commonwealth Games and was able to show, I was like, look, all this work I have produced, and they could go, we can imagine and envisage, right, what you're going to do. Because the Mitti Di Khushbu work was, again, it was an outdoor exhibition. So it was in a Lightwoods Park in Bearwood. So that they could go, okay, she's got those skills, that experience. So yeah, definitely.
And the inspirations of that Mitti Di Khushbu, so translated, guys, that's kind of the smell of the soil. Is that the kind of the literal
smell
translation
of the land, smell of the soil,
of the land? Yeah. What was the inspiration behind that? What is it? Clearly, well, this is what I'm presuming, but you can tell us otherwise. So when you have a project, do you have an idea of this is the story I want to tell, and then you go and capture, let's say, the talent, the models or whatever it might be? How do you, or is it, do you find people and then you're like, well, what's your story? Like, how do you find the stories? That's what I'm really trying to ask. And what do you get from the stories, like personally, whether in that case it's your family, but people you don't know as well? What is it doing for you?
I guess with every project I do, there's always the overarching theme or the concept I've got in mind. So with Mitti Di Khushbu, that was all about documenting my family's migration from Punjab to the UK and Birmingham. That was really clear for me. And what I wanted to create with that was a legacy, essentially, because at the time I'd just I was a new mom. I had my daughter and I was pregnant with my son, and my baby passed away. So my baby passed away in April 2018 from cancer. And I just realized if I don't capture these stories now, they're going to go. And our elders, really, that first generation that migrated here, their stories of growing up in India, growing up in Punjab, but then moving here and everything in between, I think is really important. Like I've grown up hearing those stories firsthand, but my kids haven't, not yet anyway, they're quite young. But then when they grow up, will they have the same story? So I just felt like it was really important to capture. So for instance,
no, it is. I mean, it's one thing that I wish I could do. I wish I could get to know my dad's dad better, because he died when I was about really young, about 7, 8. So my memories of him are quite limited. But he fought in the war, and he has all these stories of like being in Punjab and growing up there that I never got to hear. And I've only heard it secondhand through like my mama or my dad. And even then it's probably not from him. Like it may have a different
source, is it?
And it may have been glamorized a little bit. I don't know, but I just have to take their word for it. And it would have been great to just know him now when I'm at the age I am now, and then understand what his journey was and how he got here.
So that's really powerful.
And so that's an example of that project. And then I guess other projects it's the same. So there's always a reason, and usually I pick on issues to do with representation of gender, ethnicity, place, because they're generally the things which I think get either put to one side, or we don't have enough positive representation. So for instance, with the Commonwealth Games, the project I've done there is about really celebrating local people, and that was from the outset, but also celebrating it in local places where these
especially Sandwell, which is very diverse,
and smaller hubs which don't usually get noticed, any mention, but it's where normal people go week in, week out, participate in sports, for instance. So it's really celebrating those. And I guess with something like the Commonwealth Games, what will get talked about or seen a lot are these new stadia that have been built, these pristine buildings, but actually on a day-to-day basis, weekly basis, people like you and me, I'm guessing, go to these kind of slightly run down, slightly worn, loved, and they look a little bit grotty, but also they've got character to them, and they're the real places that people go and participate in sports. So that, for instance, is an overarching theme. Then for me, once I've got the idea, it's finding the right people, the right places I want to photograph, but then it has to fit into, well, if I want to raise and amplify voices for marginalized communities, I can't just photograph 20 white people. It has to also include, and if it's going to be representational of our community or of Birmingham and Sandwell, then we have to see faces and people from different ages, ethnicities, races, genders, all of that. Then I do consider that, and that kind of, as I'm working on a project, I'll have to keep coming back to, well, am I meeting what I want to achieve here? And if I'm not, then, well, what do I do about it? And go back to the drawing board, that kind of thing.
See, it's more than a photo, guys. I think you just see the photo. You don't see all this behind it.
all the meanings behind it, all the
meaning and the strategy and
all the deep strategy that goes into it is really important, man.
There's a lot of depth. I'm really happy that you do capture the story. I think that's one thing I've taken away from recently, and you two both allude to it now, is so with my nanny, for example, there's something one of our friends, Indy, told me about. There's a company that, other than Dragon's Den, I think, who essentially will interview your family member and then produce a book about their life.
Wow. Okay.
That's such an amazing concept. And I told my mom, and I was like, Mom, we should do this for nanny. This would be really, really cool. Because again, I listened to my nanny growing up a lot, and I know about all these like stories. I spent a lot of time in India as well. But again, going forward, like, who's going to have access to that? Like, that is the legacy. And then I told my mom, and then I was like, Mom, Mom was like, we should get for nanny. And then my mom was like, yeah, you should do it for me as well. And I was like, Mom, yeah, we will do it for you as well. But let's
do nanny first. Yeah.
And I just thought it's just amazing. I even think about something, Indy, I know you keep a journal, I keep a journal. Maybe nobody ever reads it, but even if our family members read it at some point, I find it really interesting that when I read something, it's got a date next to it. It's like, wow, this person thought this on this day. Like, just to really get an insight, and then it's the same with photos, isn't it? When you see when we get together with family, you get, from India and things, you look through old photo albums and weddings and that kind of stuff, or in videos, you're like, wow, you always seem to forget, like, this whole thing about kids forget that their parents are young. They were once what we are now. Yeah. And they had these thoughts and memories, and it's captured in these, these things that we see. And there's always a story. And actually, I've got this from you, Indy. So, the whole postcard thing that you do.
Yes.
So when we go on holiday, Jaz, Indy has this thing where he'll buy a postcard.
It's not me. It was my wife's idea. Right.
I'm not taking credit where credit's due.
I'll give her credit for this. Right.
And then on the back, these guys, they show me how to do it. They just write down the jokes or the conversations or the memories on the back of the postcard. Because often you'll take pictures when you're on holiday, but sometimes you don't remember what was happening at the time. And then I've extended it now where actually I will take a few photos from that and attach it to the postcard. So now we've got the memory and the photo and what was actually in that memory, trying to just remember it. And I was reading the ones I took from last year, and it was really nice just to think back.
Yeah, it rings bells in your mind that you forget. You're like, oh, do you remember that? Do you remember this? And then some of them I've looked at them and I'm like, I don't remember that bit. Do you remember that bit? And she's like,
but I remember being happy.
Like, okay, cool. That's fine. I can accept that.
And I think photographs have that really strong
evocative.
Yeah, they're so evocative that you can look at a photograph and it takes you back somewhere, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I think old photographs especially are really strong in that that sense. So with the work I've done with my family, I remember seeing a photograph of my mom's when she was at school with the whole school. So it's a school photograph with it outside though, and it's in Punjab, it's in the Bend, and you can see her old teacher, and it's just such a beautiful photograph. But as soon as my mom talks about it, my mom actually named the work the Mitti Di Khushbu. It's something my mom always says whenever we go to India. That's what.
That's what the phrase. Her phrase.
Because and when you look at that photograph, you could just smell. You can see you can sense all of it. But definitely, they're so evocative, and I think that's something quite powerful about them.
Yeah.
With your work, do you ever capture yourself?
No.
No one ever captures the person behind the camera, Karan. It's a common thing.
Although for the project with my family, my husband took my photograph. It was awful. It wasn't good. I was like, when he was taking it,
he's like,
now is this
you
you being self-conscious of how you feel? Or is it actually awful?
Bad?
Did you give him any training? This is the question.
Well, no, but I was sat there. He has seen me.
We are men, okay? Men need to the point where if I'm
instruction.
Exactly. Yeah. If I'm in the kitchen, you want me to do something,
you tell me exactly how you want it done.
Right? No. I'm a bit like OTT. I'll be like, show me exactly how you want this chopped. Okay, what's the optimal technique for doing this chopping?
Technique.
See, the camera I use though, you've seen it, so having just the camera I use, because it was on a tripod. I couldn't physically take the photograph myself. He had to focus it himself. But when he was taking it, I was like, that doesn't look straight to me. And it's got a leveler on the tripod.
Wow.
And he was like, no, I think it's straight. I was like, I don't think it's straight. And so it came out.
You had some Bingar 45-degree picture come out and you're like, this is horrible.
Oh, it wasn't too bad.
And you're like, this is Dasbarn of the year. Dasbarn again, straight, man.
You can pay for that one.
It cost me £1.
Yeah, but no, other than that, I don't have my photograph taken. I prefer to be on the other side.
It's about like a photographer or visual artist.
Which part do you prefer more? Is it the capturing the photo or the bit afterwards where you're getting into the story and writing? Was it about half?
Definitely taking the photographs. Yeah, I love that element because I love to talk to people. Love to get to know them, spending time with them. And something, yes, I just love taking photographs. I think I find the editing really difficult actually, because it's like, for instance, our conversation was, nearly an hour long, and then I had to edit that down to a couple of paragraphs. And how do you do it? It's really hard. Like I wrote that out after, so every person I photographed for the lockdown stories, I had about a whole A4 page of writing on them, a whole story. But then when I had to come to the edit for the book, I had to condense that down even further. And I found that really difficult. I mean, there's something really satisfying in that though, in terms of creating something as an end piece. But
Product.
I find it quite, it's a bit like a puzzle that makes my head hurt a little bit sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's why I find the picture making a little bit easier. Well, it's more straightforward, whereas then kind of trying to make everything come together, you have to work out the different elements. But then I've got to say, then when you see the final piece, whether it's the photographs up in an exhibition or in a book that I've made, I love that. Then it's like, oh yeah, but it's all the hard work in between that I find. Yeah.
All the behind the scenes. And I guess for like me, for example, like you said, our conversation was quite long, and it's interesting the bit that you found most powerful, the bit you've quoted, like that for you was the most impactful bit, and it marries up with, say, the photo. Because a lot of people who've read that, they're like, oh, they'll actually ask me about what you've written. They're like, is that what it was like? Like, and just tell me, like, I think the bit I've written about is junior medical students becoming doctors, and we had consultants who just hadn't been doing this for a long time, and then I was in the middle, and it was just, there's no hierarchy. And the bit about morale being high, I think that surprises a lot of people. They were like, oh, wasn't it really tough? I was like, yeah, it was tough, but we were all in it together. And there was no greater time to be needed. I think that's what people liked. It was the call to be needed. And everybody played their part. That was the thing. Everybody was doing it. Like we had daily people bringing things to hospital, like, bottles of water and toothbrushes, and like Itihas was providing like catering for free. And there was so much happening. So yeah, amazing.
And how are you finding it now? Just working at the hospital?
Echo. Tell us about your email.
My email.
Tell us about the email you got earlier asking if you've been
vaccinated.
vaccinated.
So there's obviously you must have heard about the mandatory vaccination, including NHS staff, and so now they're asking for evidence to show that you have been vaccinated, or with the government's current guidelines, you'll be asked to leave. Now, from a personal standpoint, I'm fully vaccinated. There's no issue, but I do have colleagues who haven't been. It's just like, well, when we were needed, then that was it. There was no like vaccination at the start. We were going to work and then obviously endangering our families when we came back as well. To the point where, at the start, no one knew anything. Like, this is the thing people forget. Like, I was talking to my friend who worked in IT and I was like, are you sleeping at home or have you got like a hotel? Like, we were really considering just leaving our families, or like I'd come home and they'd all stand at the door and then leave bags, and I had to like basically get nanga, like not fully nanga, but like throw my kapri in there, and then they'd like go, right, you go to the shower. Like, there's a whole thing. And so we did all of these things, right? And we did it with a smile and all that kind of thing. And now, so that's one thing. There's that vaccination side. Then we've got the subset of people, Jas, who, the people who are coming in with COVID are unvaccinated. And they really are polarized, these people. And it's not for me to say you should get vaccinated. It's not for me to say. I'm going to treat them either way. But there is definitely a subset of people who are really, really against the vaccine. And then the other thing is, although COVID is not as busy, the other stuff is just getting busier and busier. And I think there's been a big shift in the NHS is great. We'll clap for you, to why am I waiting for 1 hour, 2 hour? Like, that's come back now with a kind of vengeance.
Yeah.
People are getting really like
that was expected
entitled. Yeah, I guess we were really high on we are needed, and like, guys, you just need to. If you don't need to be in hospital, don't come. And that really, really hit home. That first lockdown, when Jas came in, hospitals are beautiful, man. Like, we had the right ratio of people who are unwell to doctors to the space we had, right? And now we're back to the whole, this is stretched, this doesn't work. Multiple people are sick. We can't provide that level of care that we did during the pandemic. So yeah, I mean, look, I often say it, like every couple of years, I would love it if the world went into lockdown, even for like a month. And even if we had like a sort of technological lockout, that'd be really good. There was like one day where WhatsApp went down as well. Just really get back to basics, man. And this year, 2020 was the year of, the world seemed simpler. 2021 was, ramped up again. And this year I've kind of thought, actually I want to take it back to 2020, and that kind of just life is simpler, life in conversation. So the hospitals are just basically just busier, busier than normal. And we've been threatened now. If we don't get vaccinated, you'll be asked to leave. So that's kind of where we are at the moment.
I mean, there's lots of elements to that, like you said, but I just think, well, can the NHS afford to lose that many staff? Which on top of everything else, I just think, well, in its first degree, like, surely we're already saying that we've got shortages of staff in the NHS, and how can you afford to lose loads more? I don't know, there's so much, and I don't think it should be something forced on people. Personally, that's my opinion. But and I've been fully vaccinated, but I just think
choice is the key thing here. And if you're a person who has what we call capacity and you're making a decision, hopefully it's an informed decision. I'd hope that. I think the best service I can do for somebody is explore the reasons they don't want to have a vaccine. If it's not well informed, then I have a duty then to inform them. That's okay. That I don't see as, me trying to encourage them to have it or not. But if you're making an informed decision, then that's your choice. There is no other vaccine that we mandate in the UK. You can have cancer and we can tell you've got cancer. And if you say, I don't want to have chemotherapy, we don't force you. Like, that's okay. You don't want to have surgery. You don't have surgery. So it's an interesting time. It's never happened. This level of kind of, and I think Spain said the other day that if you're not triple vaccinated, you can't go on holiday there. And so there was one angry group up north and they were like,
I think they are trying to make it more enticing to get it. So now if you're vaccinated, you don't have to do tests prior to flying.
I'm like, that came out today.
And I'm like, okay, that's a bit cheeky, because you're not really protecting people now. You're just incentivizing the vaccine. You're incentivizing the cause, not the actual problem. Which then
we covered this, didn't we? Remember during COVID, and we had some areas in I think America you found, Indy, where people have been paid $100.
Oh yeah, they were doing some unruly things over there.
There were people being
brothel activity and all that stuff. I was like, oh, okay, this is a bit much. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. People
just to incentivize people to take a vaccine, and I'm like, oh dear Lord. Right.
Oh, poor
behavior. Anyway, on that note, Karan, I think you need to finish, don't you? Yes. So, Jaskirt, thank you so much for joining us. Do you want to tell people where they can find you online?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at Jaskirt Boora, or on my website's jaskirtboora.com.
And if you please find any images, please tag the podcast and obviously Jaskirt and Dr. Jaz Mavi, Dr. Jaz Mavi on Instagram, whatever you want to call him. Okay. So yeah, that would be great if you guys could do that and keep this ball rolling for a little bit. So thank you guys for listening this far. If you've made it this far, please let us know. Join in with the poll beneath and drop us a message with your thoughts. Please do share this with other people that you think need a bit of inspiration in the minority circles as well, jumping on board with pushing forward into areas that aren't really that well championed. And I think we've done a pretty good example today on how you can break into a space that isn't well known and make it your own. All right, talk to you guys next week. Cheers.